You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our Wellness and Weight Loss Wednesday show. I'm excited to get into today's episode and share with you our very first case study of 2019. So what I'd like to do is every couple weeks take you through exactly how I read labs, look at labs inside of my practice, and enable you to get the insights. Whether you ever run a lab or not is not the point, but the insights as to what people are dealing with on a typical daily basis that we see in our practice that can help you or your loved ones or friends, family, coworkers, etc., overcome these same conditions. So what we're going to go through today is your average person out there, right? One of the average people that we work with. I literally just got this lab in 2 days ago, so it's a brand new one. That I think will have a lot of insights into how your body reacts under stress or just with typical aging. So if you like today's show, I would love to hear from you. If you like topics like this, if you'd like to see me do more case studies, I'm happy to do that. Just let me know over on Instagram. Simply go to my name, which is Stephen Cabral, StephenCabral. And let me know if this show was helpful. If it was, I'm happy to do more in the future. I'm happy to go through all sorts of different labs, whether it be blood work or omega-3 testing or hormones or gut-based testing. We can do all of those different labs, and I'll give you some of those insights on how to read the lab specifically as well. So what we're going to go through today is a lab that came in from someone named Rachel. She's 36 years old, and she ran the Thyroid Adrenal Hormone lab. And you might ask yourself, well, why would someone run a thyroid adrenal hormone lab? Well, I'm going to give you some of Rachel's symptoms that she checked off. So she checked off moderate aches and pains, mild acne, mild allergies, moderate anxiousness, mild menstruation-based changes, low blood pressure, severe low blood pressure, fibrocystic breasts, tender breasts. These are all moderate chemical sensitivities, mild constipation, fatigue in the evening, stronger fatigue in the morning, brain fog, mild. The hair is dry and brittle, increased facial hair, some hair loss on the top of the head. And then we have heart palpitations, which are severe, hoarseness, hot flashes, which are moderate, and loss of muscle mass, overall skin tone, some mood swings, and, as I said before, memory lapse. So we want to go through all of these. We'll see if there's any additional symptoms on page 2. And yes, there is. There's this rapid heart rate. We need to figure out what that is, right? So we will figure out what that is. There's some disturbed sleep, decrease in stamina, increase in sugar cravings. What else do we have? Puffy face. We have some decreased in sweating. We have vaginal-based dryness, water retention, weight gain around the hips and around the waist. All right, so we have a good amount of symptoms, but when you first read those symptoms, as a practitioner, integrative health practitioner, and someone comes in with a lot of brain fog, or they come in with weight gain, or the brittleness of the hair, the dryness of the skin, when we look at all of these, we're saying, okay, sounds like some type of low thyroid. Interesting. Well, of course, that's why they ran a test. That's a thyroid adrenal hormone-based test. But what we want to do is just say, it sounds like that. It sounds certainly like low thyroid, so we can begin to help someone with low thyroid. But let's look deeper. Let's look at what else may be going on. So when I'm looking at this lab specifically, the first thing I look at is the estrogen and progesterone. And the reason is that a lot of these same symptoms as low thyroid can also just be higher levels of estrogen and lower levels of progesterone. So that's the first thing that we look at is estrogen dominance right away in the test. So whether it's male or female, again, typically female, but on this Again, many men run the thyroid adrenal hormone as well. But when we're looking at estrogen dominance, we're typically talking about females. Now, for this particular person, Rachel came up with a 1.7 in terms of her estrogen or estradiol, which is the predominance of all estrogen in the body. About 80% of your estrogen is going to come from estradiol. And her progesterone, very interesting, came in at only a 29. Now, at 36 years old, about day 19 through 21 of your cycle, which is what we ask women to run this lab test, it should be over 150, ideally 200 plus. And I would say at 36 years old, for what I see in the practice, healthy, right around the 150 to 200. Well, this person's a 29. A 29, yet they have really good estrogen, which should be between, well, it should be right around 1.5. Hers is actually a 1.7. So now, besides our symptoms that we thought may just be low thyroid, we know that this person has a progesterone to estrogen ratio of only 17, and we need that to be above 100. So we have a clear indicator right here of estrogen dominance. Well, what do? Well, right away that we need to do something to bring down this higher level of estrogen during the luteal phase of her cycle when it should be a little lower, below 1.5. So we're going to use something called estrogen dominance. That's going to be something that's going to help to remove the excess estrogen metabolites, not allow it to convert over to some of the more harmful forms of estrogen. But also, as an integrative practitioner, what we want to be thinking about is why would progesterone levels be that low? This woman's only 36 years old. How can she have estrogen levels so low? Well, we need to now look at what could be going on. So we're going to figure that out by looking at the testosterone, the DHEA, the cortisol numbers right now. So testosterone for women around 36 years old, I like to see that between a 20 and a 40 maximum, maybe right around the 36 to 40 maximum. Well, Rachel has a 48, right? So the range goes from 16 to 55, but that doesn't mean that it's optimal, right? We want it somewhere between the 20 and 40. Ideally, I like it right around the low 30s. Well, Rachel is a 48. So now we're saying, okay, we have lower levels of progesterone, higher levels of estrogen, just from an estrogen dominant standpoint, meaning a higher ratio. We have higher levels of testosterone now. To me, we need to start looking at blood sugar because this person is at risk for PCOS. They're having a lot of these markers now for PCOS. So we're going to be able to correct that, right? So what are we going to use? Well, we're going to use a product that's going to help to modulate those higher levels of testosterone. But again, as an integrative health practitioner, we're asking why the high testosterone? So let's move down. Let's keep going with this. DHEA is a 4.1. Well, when you have DHEA, which is called dihydroepiandrosterone, you don't need to know what that means, but you need to know that DHEA helps to balance cortisol. So cortisol are basically the stress hormones of the body. They get us into fight or flight, but also we need them because they're a natural anti-inflammatory. They help to wake us up in the earlier part of the day. They help to decrease melatonin. And so when we're looking at this person's cortisol in the morning, the range is 3.7 to 9.5, but we want this person, especially, anyone really, we want their levels to be somewhere between a 6 and a 9 when they wake up in the morning. And that's so that you wake up with energy and you start to decrease those melatonin levels. Well, Rachel only has a 4.8. You noticed before, hopefully if you were listening to her symptoms, you saw that she had some morning fatigue. For sure, morning fatigue. She also said afternoon fatigue, but she said morning fatigue as well, of course, because she has lower levels of cortisol. That makes sense, right? And the lab is telling us that. Now, we can look at her overall, let's step back, and her DHEA is only a 4.1. It's not bad, but I like to see it a 6 or above. So a 4.1 seems like she has low morning cortisol, lower DHEA. It seems like she's had stress or she's been run down for at least months or probably a couple years, I would say, at least in her life to have those lower levels of DHEA. So her levels are starting to come back down right now. Now, her lunchtime, her noon cortisol is actually very good. It's a 2.7, and the range is 1.2 to 3.0. That's the highest I'd want to see it. Okay, now her afternoon cortisol is a 1.3. That's also excellent. No big issue there. But we're looking at right now, though, is where the largest issue comes into play, and that's that high evening cortisol. The range is 0.4 to 1, but ideally your cortisol at night, right before bed, which is when we take this last saliva test, the very, very simple saliva test here, is we want this a 0.5 or below. We want it really low, and this is a 1.2. So Rachel's cortisol is actually higher than the range should be. She's actually clinically out of range. Now, when you have cortisol this high at night, it's going to prevent you from producing all that good melatonin, the natural anti-cancer-based hormone, the one that helps to rejuvenate the body, rejuvenate the skin, the hair, the nails, all of those great things. And it allows for your body to begin to get into that parasympathetic nervous system, to begin to heal, to rejuvenate the entire body. So we can begin to understand now why Rachel might have those lower levels of progesterone. So that's why it's not enough just to go to a functional medicine doctor and for them to prescribe you some progesterone, because it never tells you why the progesterone is low. Well, we know why. Right now, we're seeing that Rachel has actually a very high level of cortisol right around noon. It seems pretty great in the afternoon, but it's going to feel low to her because she has a high number at noon and a very high number at night. So she gets this dip midday, even though the dip is, like totally within normal range. But we have this high cortisol at night, which is not allowing her to really drop those stress levels and allow her to get into that deep level of healing, which should take place for the next 12 hours or so, essentially 7 at night, 8 o'clock at night, all the way until 7 o'clock or so the next morning as those cortisol levels spike right between 6 and 8 a.m. So what we need to do is use a product such as Adrenal Soothe at dinner for Rachel. We need to use about 2 capsules at dinner and then have her use our deep sleep protocol or a deep sleep protocol in general that uses those same type of products in order to lower cortisol levels and to get this person in that deep level of healing. That will enable then all stress hormones to go down as the body begins to heal. Morning cortisol will begin to bump back up. If in the short term, somewhere between 6 and 12 weeks, Rachel wanted a boost in those great levels of cortisol in the morning, well, we would use a natural product called Adrenal Energy Support. And Adrenal Energy Support would give her that boost in the morning. She could simply take 2 capsules at breakfast. We don't want to use the DHEA in this particular instance. The reason is we simply don't need to. There's strong enough levels of cortisol. There's simply too much stress hormone in the body, especially at night. And the testosterone levels are too high. So we wouldn't want to give a precursor to testosterone, which would be DHEA. So we'd be using a product such as Estrogen Balance for the higher levels of estrogen to progesterone ratio. We might use Adrenal Energy Support in the AM, but we would use Adrenal Soothe at night along with the Deep Sleep Protocol. Deep Sleep Protocol would only be needed for probably about 1 month to 2 months maximum. Of course, this is based on the client's feedback. That's how we take that. And the Adrenal Soothe would be used for approximately 8 to 12 weeks. Now, vitamin D levels. This is a huge factor in overall immunity and weight loss and skin, hair, tissue, nail growth, all of that. The range is 20 to 80, but we know from a functional medicine standpoint that a healthy vitamin D range is between 50 and 70. Now, again, that looks at a lot of other factors. We're not just looking at the nanograms per milliliter of the vitamin D levels. We're also looking at a person's annual blood work. We're looking at magnesium levels. We're looking at calcium levels. We're looking at all those good things. But the level that we want for most people is right between 50 and 70 or 50 and 80 nanograms per milliliter. So what we're looking at here and overall is a very depleted vitamin D level. They're at 21. But remember, on a lab range, it won't see out of range. That's the crazy thing about labs, right? Because this person's only 1 point away from having an L for low, right? So, but we know this person's not optimal. So we are actually going to give this person a little higher dose, not high, a higher dose of vitamin D for the first month, and then bring them back down to the average 35 IUs per pound of body weight, or simply 5,000 IUs for most adults. And for children, it's going to be around 800 to 1,000 IUs, depending on their body weight. Again, we use the dosage of 35 IUs per pound of body weight. And then what we do is we simply lab test again after they've been on that amount of vitamin D after about 6 to 8 weeks. So this person needs a larger dosage. We're typically going to do closer to the 6,000 IU range, maybe a little higher, 7,000 maximum for a month to boost them back up. Again, that's still not a huge dosage at all. People use 50,000 IUs or 10,000 plus. We don't do that because of how it can start to draw more calcium into the bloodstream, which is not something that we want. So we use a normal, higher to normal dosage, and then we just drop back down to actually 4,000 IUs of the liquid vitamin D, and then they're going to get somewhere around 400 to 1,000 IUs in their daily activated multi or their daily nutritional support shake. So we'll boost that back up. That will absolutely help with the metabolism. It will help with all the processes of the body, including the hormones. And now we're looking at their overall thyroid-based levels. Now, interesting on this lab, this person, right? So we thought it was thyroid. We thought it was thyroid because the symptoms sound like thyroid. The weight gain, the dry hair, the dry skin, all of those other issues that we went along with it. Well, mood swings, etc. Turns out this person's T4 levels, they're a 1.3. And I like those T4 levels above a 1, right? It has to be above a 1, not a 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, above a 1. Person's a 1.3. They look great. Now let's look at the T3. The T3 is the activated thyroid hormone. Let's look at that. Well, activated thyroid hormone, the hormone that's actively used within the cell, about 70% of all usable thyroid is at T3. I want them between a 3 and a 4. Well, this person's a 3.3. So we're good, right? They're not on the 2s. They look good right there. And the TSH, we want that TSH between 0.5 and 2. Whereas there's 1.4. Looks good so far. Very healthy looking thyroid. Let's look at their TPO antibodies, which looks at Hashimoto's or autoimmune-based issues with their thyroid. We want their number below a 50. And this person is a 12. So there is clinically nothing wrong with this person's thyroid, and that's why you can't just say it's thyroid issues alone, right? You can't say, oh, this person's just suffering from low thyroid. Now, they're suffering from hormone-based issues, serious hormone imbalances, and we're considering vitamin D part of that hormonal process. They're suffering from very low levels of progesterone, which is why they're missing their period sometimes, right? They're not able to really build up the uterine lining. They're not able to regulate the luteal phase of their cycle, which is that last 14 days as progesterone should start to increase. And because of that, they're getting basically unabated estrogen. They're not getting the balance basically of progesterone to estrogen. So they're going to start to feel more of the water retention, more of the moodiness, any premenstrual based symptoms that they may have because they're not getting that increase in progesterone. So at 36 years old, we're not going to start right away with any type of natural based progesterone. We're simply going to try to control the stress-based process because we see that there's elevated levels of cortisol. So my job right now is to really come back on we're going to give a product to lower testosterone in women naturally. We're going to use the adrenal soothe at night. We're going to use the estrogen balance. We're going to increase those levels of vitamin D. We're also going to be using the daily fruit and vegetable blend to help with the cruciferous vegetable intake. We're going to use the daily nutritional support, and we're absolutely going to increase the omega-3s in their diet or through supplementation. So we'll use all of those, and then we will also add in lifestyle-based factors. We'll talk about meditation. We'll talk about if they're doing excessive exercise, they're exercising at night. We're trying to figure out why the high cortisol levels at night. We might want to even just use blue blocking glasses at night. We might do an Epsom salt soak bath at night to calm those cortisol levels as well and help with sleep. So we're going to work on a lot of the lifestyle factors. We'll go through the whole de-stress protocol. So we'll work on the diet, the exercise, the stress reduction. We'll absolutely look in towards detoxification. We will work on that parasympathetic nervous system we spoke about, helping to rejuvenate the body, especially at night between 7 and 7. We will also work on the emotional balance, see what type of stressors are going on in their life. And then we already talked about the supplementation. So this is exactly what we do in our practice. And again, this is not just, the reason I'm giving you this is not to say, oh, you have to do this at all. But this is what it looks like to figure out exactly what's going on in your body. I want you to truly have that power to know that this is the year that you can make this happen. So you could find a local integrative doctor, integrative health practitioner around you, and they can run these types of labs. This one is called the Thyroid Adrenal Hormone. You can just literally, you can go to equilibriumnutrition.com. You can look up the sample reports. Just type in thyroid adrenal and you'll find it. Or go to stephencabral.com/1062. And I'll put a link up there for the thyroid adrenal hormone. But what I want you to know, and the reason I went over this in general is, again, you can choose to run this if you want. It's literally the greatest weight loss-based test in the world. And the reason is that we're not testing for weight loss, right? Because inability to lose weight or gaining weight in the hips or the waist or retaining water, any of these issues are symptoms. Weight gain is a symptom. It's a symptom of an imbalanced body. It's a symptom of a body that has not reached homeostasis or equilibrium. There's something off within the body. And I look at this all around me. Like literally the other day, I was in one of those big department-based stores, and I was just picking up a few things in Maine. And the cashier, was a very overweight young man. He was probably, if I had to guess, 19 years old. And he was at least 100 pounds to probably 120, 130 pounds overweight. And, I don't know. Of course I don't know. And I'm not here. Obviously, I'm not passing judgment. But I'm here to help. I really am. I want to help. And I know that it's not my place to reach out and try to say, hey, can I help you? Because maybe he doesn't want to. Maybe he doesn't want to lose weight. But I just find it hard to imagine that the difficulties with being 120 pounds overweight, especially as a teenager, and also just the joints, right? And I look at people and I see the wear down on the joints, the wearing on the breathing, right? Because you're holding an extra 120 pounds. And I just know that I'm pretty sure, all these thoughts are going through my mind that this kid right here, he didn't do anything wrong. He's probably eating the same foods as his friends. He really is. I did a lot of the same things as my friends when I was, 15, 16 years old, but I got really sick when I was 17. It just happens to some people, right? But there's always a reason why. There's always a reason why. And when I look at this kid, again, I'm saying maybe he does drink some soda and maybe he does eat some pizza. But you know what? I'm willing to bet that there's a lot of other people that have the same diet as him, the same lifestyle, and they didn't gain that much weight. And that's why I really find it offensive when people just say, oh, you just need to eat less and exercise more if you want to lose weight. Sure, that helps, but only to a degree. And only to a degree when you have hormonal imbalance. And that's why we have, Rachel here that we just went over, and she's probably doing a lot of the other things right. She's probably eating well. She's probably doing some supplements, but she's not able to achieve the goals that she wants because she doesn't know what's going on in her body until she runs a lab like this. So all I want to do is simply to give you hope out there that if you're having trouble losing weight, well, you'll run something like a thyroid adrenal hormone, or you'll just at least have the peace of mind knowing that, you're eating well, you're exercising, you're trying to do the right things and it's not working, is that it's not always you. It's not always what you're putting in your mouth, and it's not always the amount of exercise you're doing, is that there's an actual hormonal imbalance, that there's a blood sugar imbalance, or there's low vitamin D, or there's high cortisol at night, and that you're able to correct these things. So maybe now is not the right time for you, and I understand that as well, but eventually, one day it will be, because you'll be kind of sick and tired of being sick and tired, and it's time to make that change. I want 2019 to be that year for you, and if you listen to this in 2020, I want 2020 to be that year for you as well. And so, again, you might not also be the person with the issue, but we're training a lot of people to be integrative health practitioners right now. The Integrative Health Practitioner Certification, or for people who want to learn the information for them, for their family, or they want to begin to make a career out of this, even if it's just part-time to help others heal. So what I want is to be every family to have their own healer. And so if you know the information exists, at least you can pass it on to your family, your community, your coworkers, your church, anyone in your environment who needs this information. This is what it's all about. And again, you can find someone in your local community. If there is someone that's able to practice this type of medicine, you'll be able to get the answers you need. Once you have the answers, you'll be able to take an actionable step that's based on your bio-individuality. That's what it's all about. That's where I believe medicine is heading. Forget about the drugs. Forget about all the pharmaceuticals. Let's figure out why. What's the reason why you're not able to lose the weight? What's the reason why your digestive system's not working properly right now? What's the reason you have the acne, right? We look at this person, we say, oh, well, what's the reason they have the acne? Super low vitamin D, possibly. Very high levels of cortisol, possibly. But most likely estrogen dominance and the high testosterone. So now we're figuring out, we're able to begin to work the process of removing the issues that's causing the symptoms being the weight gain, the water retention, the acne, the missed menstrual cycles, etc. There's always a reason why. Just remember that as you're moving into this year, there is always a reason why. Make this the year you figure it out. And if this show is helpful, I would love to hear from you, because remember, the Cabral Concept podcast is about you. It's about our community. And I only want to talk about things that you get benefit from. So let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Take care, everyone. Have an amazing start to the year, and I'll talk with you soon. I want to sincerely thank you for your support of this podcast. I couldn't do it without you, and I mean that. I truly do. I also want to make sure you knew that we now have multiple ways for you to find your answers to the most difficult health, wellness, weight loss, and anti-aging questions. You can find podcast-specific topics like thyroid, adrenal, hormones, sleep, digestion, Ayurveda, and many more at stevencabral.com/podcasts that will then link you to your favorite Apple, Spotify, and other podcast players. Plus, all new podcasts and weekly exclusive video content is being added to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Stephen Cabral. And that's Stephen with a PH. Head on over and subscribe so that you don't miss any of the exclusive content. Lastly, if you've ever found any of my podcasts or books to be helpful, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a review on iTunes or your favorite media player for the podcast. Rating and subscribing to the YouTube and podcast allow me to reach more and more people and help spread my mission of healing throughout the world. Thank you again for being a part of this movement.